And if there was any doubt there, I mean, you guys crushed it on the Dreamwalker, dude. So to me, the Dreamwalker was like kind of a rebirth of Angels and Airwaves. And Tom had said, he's on the record as saying Love One, Love Two kind of started sounding similar, and he was really wanting to push it in a different direction. And with Alon now in the band, and it seems like the Dreamwalker is basically Alon, yourself, and Tom
Yeah,
making that stuff happen. I mean, dude, you guys pushed the envelope there and fucking crushed it. I bet Tom was so stoked on that record.
he was. There were I mean, this record was made over almost a year and a half, because of the different schedules that Elon and Tom had with in touring obligations and all that stuff. And they needed to get their groove. And that didn't happen until halfway through the record, because Tom could never come up with melodies or stuff, something Elon would write.
Mm.
For whatever reason, he would never be able to like clue in on it, because their chord chord choices, melodic choices are so vastly different. Elon's more of a minor key guy, and Tom is major. Like, that's one big difference, is that Tom's always writing in major. Elon seems to live in the minor world. Um, so about 3 weeks into kind of things not going so smoothly, Elon said, "You know what? Why don't you start off all the songs? Get your verse, your chorus, whatever you feel like is good, and then I will come in and start doing my thing to it, to take it a little bit more into my world." And there are the two. I've probably said this in the past in different interviews, but Ilan is very meticulous, very knowledgeable. He's like a Da Vinci type of artist, where he's focusing on the most minute situation, and Tom is like, throw paint at the wall. I love that. That's cool. Like Jackson Pollock or something. It's like, that's how they work. So you have two very different people, and so they're two very different situations, directions that the record could have gone, and it met somewhere in the middle, like perfectly in the middle. And that was probably a little bit to do on my end, because I ended up being the referee. And I was almost like the Elon whisperer to Tom and the Tom whisperer to Elon. It was like I could translate, because me and Tom kind of have a lot of the same musical background, with like the whole Southern California punk scene, like the whole Warped Tour thing. Like, I was way into that. Elon is like, at that point, had maybe 8 bands on his iPhone, iPod, whatever, and it was like the greats. It's like the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Queen, The Police, Radiohead, Nine Inch Nails, and that's where, and a ton of classical music. Like, he just loves classical music. And it's not necessarily that he doesn't know of other things. It's just he doesn't really enjoy other other things. So even though he's played in all these different bands, like, it's not necessarily what he enjoys listening to all the time. Like, he loves the greats, and he gets into these weird, like, little, like, things. Like, he got into Hall and Oates for a year and went like deep into Hall and Oates. Like, that's a very unusual thing, I would say.
But you were the perfect mediator. So you're the person who
Yeah.
speaks both their languages. And at that point, did you have enough skin in the game to where Tom took your critiques and
Well,
direction?
that was the most refreshing thing of my experience with Tom, period, is that the very first session that we had, we got together, and started doing what would have become diary. And from the very first take of something, he'd be like, Aaron, what do you think? And I was like, whoa, okay, so I'm not just engineering, or I'm an engineer that, are you humoring me, or what's going on? And he's always been very open to criticism, to opinions, to if I wrote something better or Elon wrote something better, like the best idea wins. Like he just wants to make the greatest bit of music that
Yeah.
he could possibly make at that moment. So right away, he'd ask me my opinion, and I'm a terrible liar when it comes to stuff. Like if I don't like something or I love something, like I'm very vocal about it. And that works. It's worked for me with everybody I've had to work with, but I could see it not working a lot of the time. And oddly, it would come with bands that I would manage, because they'd be like, well, you're a manager and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, but I was a musician. I was in bands. I record stuff. I have an ear.
Yeah.
Come on. And they're like, well, yeah, we know what we're doing. And it's like, flew into the bands that never made it.
Right.
And here's this guy who sold 30 million records asking me for my opinion and taking it. And it's kind of like that's kind of where our partnership started. And at that point, I never knew where it was going to go. It was kind of like living things day by day. I assumed maybe at some point there would be somebody else being brought into the fold. Like I never saw this as a permanent gig, but I think he saw that I have a work ethic and good taste, and more than anything, we get along very well, and that's super important. It's super, super, super important because if you're making records and stuff, the last thing you want to do is be around somebody you just can't stand.
Right.
And
Yeah,
that
that
goes
makes
both
sense.
ways. That
Yeah.
goes both ways. I've worked with bands where I'm just like, what time is this thing over at? Like, I got to get out of here. But this is since day one. It's just been a good time